Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. You have your dietitian besties. We're best friends. You're our best friend too. Sophia Pavia and Caitlin Johnson. We are here with our back to the basics kind of retro episodes where we are going to rewind and go back to basics of fertility, but also stuff that we covered like 5 years ago on the podcast. And way to go,
And
you.
we've learned since then.
Yeah, we've learned things and we talk better and stuff.
Praise God for that.
So
we talk better and stuff.
I did that on purpose.
So here we are. Hey, heads up, I've got muffins in the oven, and that is not a euphemism. I really am baking some
yeasty
zucchini
stuff.
carrot muffins. God. And so my timer's going to go off in like 7 minutes, and then it's going to be, I got to go turn off the oven. So just so you know.
So listener, we're going to cut all that out. So you don't really need to know, but here we are.
Well, if we're mid-sentence and suddenly it's like, beep, 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 then you know why. Now I got to go change my muffins, and you guys are going to have to sit through a commercial break, and then we'll be right
And then we'll be back. So here we are. What kind of muffins are you making? And why are you making them? Give us a little bit of that.
They are, we call them superhero muffins, and they're like a high fiber breakfast muffin for when you want to have something additionally to your savory breakfast. I just make these in like a big batch and then freeze them, or they're good. They started with like postpartum quick snack kind of thing. So if the basis is almond flour, so it's 2 cups of almond flour to 1 cup of rolled oats. And then you put in like 2 grated carrots, 1 medium-sized zucchini, and then you can put like nuts in there. I had some cinnamon pistachios that I used this time, raisins. I put pumpkin seeds in there a lot, pumpkin and sunflower instead of nuts, like sort of the seed cycling kind of deal, which I don't like so much with when I'm doing like the sesame seeds. I don't like them in there very much, but bigger seeds I'll put in there. Like sunflower seed is like a bigger seed, and so is a pumpkin seed. So those, and then there's like egg and maple syrup and vanilla, cinnamon, a little dashy-do of nutmeg. And then whip it all together and bake for about 30 minutes in a muffin tin. And then there you have it. You've got sort of like a carrot cake-esque muffin. They're pretty like rustic because it's like grated carrot. It's not like the leftovers from if you like juiced a carrot where it's like very thin and homogeneous. It's like, yeah, it's like shreds of carrot, shreds of zucchini. But I really like them. My husband really likes them. And they are a high fiber, medium protein, fairly low carb muffin that you can grab and go. And I actually used our lovely sponsor, Fond, sent us some lard, and they have like a cinnamon vanilla lard. And so this recipe usually calls for melted butter, but I put cinnamon vanilla melted lard from Fond in it. So we will see how this goes. I also made a bomb diggity caramel corn a couple weeks ago using that lard. It was my first time making caramel corn and my first time using this lard. And instead of melted butter, I used the cinnamon vanilla lard because I've been like dying for like Cracker Jack style caramel corn, but I cannot bring myself to freaking eat what comes in that box of Cracker Jacks. Like what was delicious at like your cousin's baseball game kind of thing when you were growing up has now become so bad. Like they don't use real vanilla anymore. They're using like soybean oil, corn syrup. It's just like low quality, doesn't taste that good. So I wanted to make like elevated caramel corn, and I
So
used that
fun.
lard.
You know what I
It
used
was
it
really
for?
good.
Is we love doing Cuban food. I grew up in Southern Florida, and so like mojo pork and really good Cuban black beans and plantains is I make it once a month or so, and I go get these like overripe plantains, and I
Mm-hmm.
used to cook them in butter to make, I forget what it's actually called, but it's like a
Tostilotes or something like that.
well,
Tostones.
tostones are ripe plantains and they're more like chips. These are a
Mm.
different kind. It will come to me later in the episode, but they're almost sweet. You don't add anything sweet. It's like taking an overripe banana and frying it in butter. Well, I did it in
Mm.
lard and it was like, oh my God, it was so good. I should have used the cinnamony one, but it was delicious
I gotta
anyway.
take videos of myself doing this. It's just such a pain in the patoot to like get out your equipment, and
Yeah.
I just don't have a lot of time. It's like I'm cooking. I gotta get to it. I can't like set it up and like, oh, is the angle right? Okay, now let me move it to
What
like
you
grate
should
the
just do
carrot.
is like you're eating the thing and you're like, I cooked this in fond, whatever, la la la. And it's just a story. Fast moment. Doesn't need to be a big deal.
Yeah, I
Well,
need to do more of
anyway,
that.
this is not what we came to talk about today, but I hope our culinary diversions are enticing you and making
And
you
I hope you
feel,
go buy some fond lard because that's
yeah.
good shiz right there. And it's
Oh my gosh.
extremely versatile.
Oh yeah. All of the things I've made in it have been so good.
Yeah, for real. Do it.
Okay,
Do it
here we
now.
are. We're going to talk today about cervical things, cervical signs,
Cervical
cervical
signals,
cervical
symptoms.
mucus, cervical positioning, and how these things can communicate to you, be a signal about your fertility, help you optimize sex timing, help you maybe uncover if something's not going exactly right and we need to make some
Hmm.
adjustments. We can learn a lot from these fluids, and that's what we're going to get into.
Yeah, the alternative title to this episode that I wanted it to be was "What is your goo telling you?" What is your cervical mucus? What are the messages your mucus is telling you? What's your goo telling you?
Oh my gosh. Goo makes me think of this reel I saw the other day of this woman with her fiance painting on menstrual blood on his face. It wasn't
Oh,
really
on his
menstrual
face,
blood.
pretending it was a
Yes. She's like,
yes.
"Look, it's
Oh
a
God.
face mask. It's I just heard that this new face mask is so great because it has all these stem cells and just using your period blood, it's free or something." And he like retches. He's like, "This is oh, like what?" Pushes her away. Anyway, goo, fluids. Shouldn't be so
It's
taboo,
true.
that goo that's coming from you.
It shouldn't be, but we're not going to tell you to rub it on your face. We're going to draw the line where we want you to rub it between your fingers. We want you to feel how it feels when it rubs across your perineum, but we draw the line at rubbing it on your face. That's not going to give you more
Or
information
on your
about your
partner's
fertility,
face.
or on your partner's face. Yes, that we don't need to do that. All right, well, let's start with cervical mucus, okay, since we're talking about what's your goo telling you. So for people, oh, it's muffin time. I'll be
Muffin
right back. I'll be right back.
time.
Okay. Everybody listen to this ad from Fertility Cloud while I go switch over my muffins. BRB. Hey, Food Freedom and Fertility family. It's Sophia introducing Fertility Cloud. High treatment costs can be daunting, but here's some good news. 80% of Fertility Cloud patients have gotten pregnant for under $2,000 after just 5 months of treatment. Starting your family doesn't need to come with a huge price tag. Fertility Cloud virtual consultations mean you can talk to them from the comfort of your couch. They create personalized plans for men and women, whether it's ovarian stimulation with Clomid or Letrozole, Ovidrel trigger shots, guidance on male fertility, or even weight management support with medication. As a special for Food Freedom and Fertility listeners, get $50 off your initial medical doctor consultation. With meds delivered in just a day or two, unlimited support for your questions, and free follow ups when needed, they're here to make your path to parenthood smoother and more affordable. Ready to start? Visit myfertilitycloud.com and enter food freedom, one word, at checkout. I'm back. And look, I brought a muffin with me. This one's from the
Amazing.
first batch, so it's more cooled. I'll show you the innards. See how it's sort of like there's like pieces
Hmm.
of like zucchini in it?
It's almost like a morning glory.
I don't know what that is.
My mother-in-law makes them. My kids love them. They're like grated carrot and grated apple, kind of have like a cinnamony
Mm.
vibe. Similar.
Yeah.
I
Yes.
riff on that with, and the nice thing about almond flour, guys, is that your overall carb content of an almond flour versus a wheat flour or even some other gluten-free flours, the overall carbs are lower and the fiber's
Mm-hmm.
higher. So your net carb
Yeah.
ratio is much improved. That will yield a denser muffin. So it's not going to
Mm-hmm.
taste like a Starbucks muffin that basically is cake. It's a
No.
very hearty muffin. But the other
Mm-hmm.
thing is that it's got nearly as much protein as it has net carbs. And so the carb that you're going to get from the almond flour is going to be really kind of neutral in terms of your blood sugar impact, which is nice. So then you can layer in things on top of it like raisins without busting your bank in
Mm-hmm.
terms of blood sugar. So tinkering with recipes like that, if you have a favorite muffin and you just want to like try the next time you make it, use half almond flour or half coconut flour, similar benefits and profile with coconut flour. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to be denser, but you can start doing stuff like that. I do this a lot with recipes where it's like I work my way over to see like how far can I take it, or I'll throw oats in my blender and kind of make it into an oat flour. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and the other thing that I do is I'll sneak in stuff like collagen peptides, cottage
Mm-hmm.
cheese, or an extra egg or two to kind of also increase that protein content, which wasn't
Yeah.
necessarily Sophia's goal for why she was making this for her husband, but can be really helpful in blood sugar management for those of you listening to us. So, okay, back to cervical mucus.
Mm-hmm.
Let's kind
Mm-hmm.
of bring it to the basics. Why does your body make cervical mucus? Let's answer that. Let's talk about how it's different at different points in your cycle. And then we can kind of
Mm-hmm.
start extrapolating what that means for you in terms of your fertility. And then what it might mean for you if we're looking at this and your cervical mucus patterns don't sound like textbook and like the points that we want you kind of looking for as signals.
So cervical mucus, the origin is in the title. It comes from your cervix. Your cervix has these things called crypt glands, which sound very spooky, but they're not spooky. It's basically just a gland like anything else. Like think of it like, your salivary glands that make saliva. These crypt glands, they make the mucus that you see coming out of you on a daily basis. So these glands are very sensitive to the hormone estrogen as well as very sensitive to progesterone. And those are the two main drivers of the changes you're going to see in your cervical mucus. So, a healthy cervix, when it's exposed to increasing estrogen, is going to make a slimy, slippery egg white, is what it's often referred to. But think of like you blow your nose while you're on a run, like that sort of like, not like sinus infection level, but like runny nose from eating like spicy hot peppers or something like that sort of like thin, slippery snot. That's what we want the cervical mucus to be like. That's fertile cervical mucus. And that comes as a result of increasing estrogen in your cycle. So, the first part of your cycle, the follicular phase, after you're done having your period, your estrogen is going to gradually rise and then have a sharp rise right about at the time of ovulation. And this causes your cervix to respond by making more of this mucus. And your cervix is going to do other things too. It's going to change in texture, it's going to change in shape, it's going to change in its position inside of your vagina, whether it's down low or up high or in between. But just talking about the mucus, that increase of estrogen, that sharp increase of estrogen, especially, is what's going to increase your production of that egg white cervical mucus. And then after ovulation, we see estrogen take a deep dive and progesterone begin to rise rapidly. And in fact, progesterone rises to be several times more than your estrogen. It's going to be like many multiples higher than what your estrogen is. And that surging increase in progesterone tells those glands on your cervix to thicken and dry up your cervical mucus, essentially making a mucus like barrier between your vagina and your uterus. So early in your cycle, we're seeing a lot of this slimy, slippery, wet mucus. And that's because your body's anticipating sperm coming up into your uterus to make a baby. This is what your body wants, even if she's not accomplishing this task, or even if you're not trying to conceive yet and you don't actually want her to do that this cycle. This is biologically what your body's trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then after ovulation, your body says the baby shop is closed. We don't want any more sperm or germs or finger bacterias or dirt or grime of any kind getting up into this uterus and potentially harming a baby that could be coming down the pipes. So your body will thicken up that mucus and you'll see it go from like a watery egg white consistency to almost like rubber cement. Like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
when those envelopes that are like self seal envelopes and you like pull it, or like the label on a magazine, that's an even
Mm-hmm.
better one. And you
Mm-hmm.
like pull it off and it has like that sort of stretchy, rubbery stuff. That's what your mucus is going to look like post ovulation as you head towards menstruation, and get even drier from there to the point where now it's becoming like lotiony almost, where it's really a lot drier than it was in your follicular phase. And that's the work of progesterone. It changes the chemistry of what's happening in those glands and goes from being a slip and slide to soldier glue. Like,
Mm-hmm.
we don't want to let anything
Gorilla
in
glue.
here. This is a, yeah, mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Gorilla glue, neosporin, whatever you want to call it, to like keep everything sanitary and safe inside your uterus, keeping germs out. And then if you're pregnant, that continues and you continue having all of this like thick, sturdy mucus that's protecting the baby and keeping things from getting up into the uterus. If you're not pregnant, then your period will come and the mucus will turn into not, well, what am I trying, menstrual flow. And
Mm-hmm.
then that will be what your body does, and the cycle begins anew.
Yeah, it's almost like dissolving or pushing through, and you
Hmm.
still make mucus during your menstrual flow. And it may even
Hmm.
you'll be able to kind of tell that. I always feel like my first couple days where like my flow is lighter, you can almost see some menstrual fluid and some kind of more cervical fluid. Like it's mixed
Yes,
together,
it
but
doesn't.
it can be somewhat distinctive.
And you don't, your menstrual blood is, it's not going to look the same as like if you cut your leg and it's like
Mhm.
pure blood pouring out of a wound.
Mhm.
Much waterier, much brighter.
Mhm.
It's not going to be like that coming through your uterus and out of your vagina, because it is mixing with cervical fluid, and it isn't just blood that's coming out of you. It's
Mhm.
the lining and tissue of your uterus, which is thicker and
Mhm.
more slimy. So
Mhm.
this is normal and good. Think of the consistency of like maple syrup versus the consistency of blood or
Mhm.
of
Like a
like
full
water.
liquid.
That's
Mhm.
mm-hmm,
Yeah, and so some of you may be hearing this and going like, "Oh, my whole life I wondered what that was." Or many of you
mm-hmm,
are going to go, "I just like we're thinking about me going off the hormonal birth control that I've been on for 10 years. And I've never seen anything that remotely looks like this because
mm-hmm,
we have impacted and kind of arbitrarily come in and turned off your own hormone signaling, given you
mm-hmm,
hormone like substances in your body that have essentially kind of turned off this cervical mucus production. In some
mm-hmm,
cases, it's actually signaling for you to make that thicker mucus. But
Mm-hmm.
it's actually one of the ways hormonal contraceptives work to impact helping you not get pregnant. So like
Yeah,
many of
preventing
them,
pregnancy.
you don't ovulate, but we're also drying up cervical mucus. So it's an inhospitable environment for sperm to
Mm-hmm.
survive. So there's like multiple things going on. So if you're somebody who's coming off of that or who is just used to not seeing anything like this, you may go like, what are they talking about? And when you come off the pill over time, hopefully you will see these things start kind of turning back on for you. Or you may be
Mm-hmm.
listening to this thinking like, my whole life I've wondered why it always looks like I have snot coming out of my vagina every once in a while. Even my
Mm-hmm.
partner has mentioned that sometimes it feels different, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this is actually good and normal and a design, like, and has purpose, and that's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Which when you're starting to get to know your own sexual organs, and I think there's kind of like this awakening going on, especially in Christian communities, where it's like it's okay and good to understand what your vagina and your labia and these things are, and what they may even look like, what the purposes of these organs are other than just bearing children, and like how they work for
Mm-hmm.
pleasure, how they work for
Very important.
reproduction,
Yes.
how they protect you, just like all these different things. And even it being hairy or it being this or it being that or different after childbirth or just different because every body is a little bit different. Like it's still
Yes.
beautiful and good. And if you're listening to this and going, I've never even looked in a mirror down there, like I only have my top down
Mm-hmm.
view, I encourage you to get to know yourself a little bit and get more comfortable
Yes.
with these ideas because we're going to be talking about things like wiping and touching that fluid that is on the toilet paper or inserting fingers into your vagina to feel where your cervix position is. And so this literacy, this body literacy and this cycle literacy is more intimate than taking your basal body temperature in the first Back to the Basics episode. And that's good and okay. And in fact, I hope that we can present this in a way that you are actually excited about starting to learn these things if you have never dipped
Mm-hmm.
into it, or if this is something you're coming back to after months and months of trying to conceive and it just felt like too much to learn or too much to do for a while. We invite you to like be part of this conversation to understand more and more how beautiful your body is and what these signals are doing for you. So, we've kind of covered how your body changes throughout the cycle. Your cervical mucus may look this way, may look that way. Let's jump into how should I be approaching checking this cervical mucus? Like, what does that actually look like?
I love this question because checking your cervical mucus and checking your cervical position are two different things that you need to do differently. Checking your cervical position, which we haven't really gotten into yet, but it will require putting fingers into your vagina. This is not how you check your cervical mucus. If you are doing that, if you're putting fingers in your vagina to check your mucus, you're going to think you're fertile all cycle long because your vagina is not dry skin. It is a moist mucous membrane. Think of it as like the inside of your nose or the inside of your mouth or even your eye. It's not meant to be completely dry. And so it's going to have moisture 365 days a year, whether you're ovulating or not. So we do not want you reaching up into your vagina to check your mucus. We observe mucus by what comes out, not what is in. So, what I want you to look at first is check your panties. What's going on in your undies? Is it dry and sort of flaky? Is it slimy, slippery? Is it sort of rubber cementish, lotiony? What is happening in your panties is the first thing to check because your vagina is self cleaning. I'm sure you've heard this 100 times. Don't put soap in there, don't squirt water up in there, don't put any perfumes or what all up in there. It does its own job. Don't worry about it. But what comes out all on its own, that's the first place to observe. look in your panties and what are you seeing there? The only way you're going to be able to interpret the message your body is sending you is if you're looking every day. So you can't just look at it one time, like you just trot into the bathroom right now, drop trow, and take a peek and be like, oh, it must mean I'm ovulating. Well, because everyone is different, we want to be looking at changes over time. So you're going to observe your whole cycle's worth of panty signs before you can make a real judgment on whether what you're seeing is fertile mucus or not. Because as women, we also get lubricated when we're aroused. And so if you've been having a very sexy day, you're going to notice more slippery stuff in your panties. And same thing if you just had sex and you're still leaking the semen from the night before, it's going to be difficult to tell then as well. I just say this because observing every single day, you actually will get good at noticing, is this arousal fluid or is this cervical mucus? Is this the wounded, dying, fallen soldiers of my husband's conquest last night? Or is this fertile cervical mucus?
Yeah.
You got to observe it consistently in order to know the difference between these things. But in my opinion, step one is look in the gusset of your panties, or your yoga pants or your shorts or whatever you're wearing on your bottoms, to be able to see what are things looking like today. And is it crumbly? Is it lotiony? Is it slimy? Is it watery? Is it dry? These are the things that are going to tell you about where you're at in your cycle. So that's step one.
Mm-hmm. What would you say is step two?
Step two is when you poo. That's when we're going to check again, because when you poop, have a bowel movement, however you like to say it, take a dump, I don't know what your vernacular is for this. You are working and relaxing pelvic floor muscles to get your poops out. So then when you wipe from front to back, you will see very clearly the kind of mucus that your body's making today.
Mm-hmm.
So that is the best time to actually take a look at what's going on, is after you've taken a poop. So what you may want to do, you can decide how you like to do this, but you poop before you wipe. I like to take some paper and wipe just my vulva, not towards the back, not nearing my anus,
Like not
and
bringing
wipe back
anything
to front.
forward.
Yeah, no potential that you're dragging poo particles into your vagina. Okay. We're just wiping the vulva so that I can observe what just came out of me when I was pooping. Not the poop, but the vulva. What came out of my vagina just now? Then, once I've observed that, I get a fresh piece of paper and wipe vulva to anus, front to back. And the first thing before you even look, you want to quiet yourself and feel, how does this feel as the paper slides across my perineum? Your perineum being that little space between your vagina and your anus. Is it scraping? Is it dry? Is it wet? Is it slippery? Noticing the sensation as you're wiping across your perineum. And then I look at the paper again. There will be poop on this paper. So this paper, I don't recommend you like touch the mucus and, observe it. That's what that first wipe was for. The second one is to clean your bottom, but you do want to look and see what this has yielded as well. Is it slippery? Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it stretchy? You can look at the consistency and then finish cleaning your anus after you're done pooping.
It's so obvious to me when I have quality fertile cervical mucus and when I don't. Like I can feel it in my panties before I even like
Yes.
sit down, right? Or like I sit
Mhm.
down and I go pee even, still wiping front to back. When I wipe, it's so slippery. Like when you wipe
Mhm.
and go pee and you are away from a fertile point in your cycle, when you wipe, it's like you get dry easily. When you have really quality fertile cervical mucus and you're making a lot of it, like for me, for instance, I have to wipe a few times after I urinate when
Mhm.
I have that fertile cervical mucus to get myself dry enough to make sure I've gotten all the urine away too. And
Mhm.
so like it may come to a point where your cycle health improves and your hormones then have improved and you're making enough of this and enough quality amounts and type to be able to kind of tell much more easily. But at the beginning, and if you're questioning what these things are, like it takes observation. You are literally
Mhm.
your own fertility scientist in the comfort of your own bathroom, which to some of you may feel like, ugh, but honestly, it's so encouraging. Your body tells you these things. Like we
It
are
does.
coming to this point where we're so reliant on technology. We're so reliant on so many things like pee on the stick and let me tell you exactly what your hormones are. While that can be helpful, it
Mhm.
may have its place, your body can do so much of the work just with what it has been designed to do. And I think that
Yes.
that's really encouraging.
It is, and this should be encouraging to you. And I want to just put one more thing out there about this. You are allowed to be really bad at this when you're first starting. Okay. Give yourself permission to be bad at understanding your body. Don't make it mean something about you. Just take it as I'm new at this. It's not normal to be great at something that's brand new to you.
Mhm.
So give yourself permission to be bad at this and don't let that discourage you. If day after day you're wiping and you're going, this shit all looks the same. I don't know. I don't know what I'm supposed to be seeing. Everything is the same. Nothing, I don't know. And that's all right. It takes a while to do this. But let me tell you something, you're going to be wiping regardless. I mean, I hope to God that you're wiping regardless. Please. But you're going to be doing it regardless. You may as well learn the signals that your body is sending you, but give yourself permission to be lousy at it, to be confused. And instead of being judgmental and making a verdict about yourself or your body, or, I'm never going to be able to have a baby. God, I can't even do this. So overwhelming. Blah, 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 blah. Switch that to a curious explorer who is learning and who is interested and who sees a mystery in something that they don't understand. And instead of making that a verdict about how dumb they are, it is something exciting to learn and find out. Make that mindset shift as you're doing this, because it can very easily feel like, oh, one more thing I'm not good at. I guess I'm not meant to be a mom, or some just toxic lie that you're believing about this, instead of curiosity and excitement to learn. So
Mhm.
that's something I really want you to adopt while you're learning to do this.
Yeah, and I would highly recommend to like there's this level of like give yourself grace while you learn a new thing. It's also hard to learn in isolation. Like when you're in biology class or calculus, like is a teacher, there are
Mhm.
sometimes tutors and scholastic level things. There's like teachers' assistants that are there. You have your classmates that you do study
Yeah,
groups
your
with.
friends that are learning
If you
this along with you.
Exactly, and so, you don't have to do this in isolation, and trying to piece together, like, "Let me try to understand the nuance of me doing this since I have hypothalamic amenorrhea, or I have endometriosis, or I have PCOS, or I have adenomyosis," like, maybe find somebody that can hold your hand and help you through the nuance of this. Sophia has a course all
Mm,
about this. We have information
I
in
do.
the PCOS app about this. People hire us to help them individually or in group programs. There are people that all they do is teach cycle charting. So, if you're trying to become expert at this, first of all, you don't need to reach some sort of collegiate level at this, but it's okay to be like, on your Instagram that just your friends and family really follow you and be like, "Hey, do anybody that I know chart these things or been through this? Like, I'd like to just have somebody I can talk to about this and be able to talk it out. Ask your best friend, ask your mom, ask your sister, because it's hard to learn something new in isolation."
It is. And when it's only your voice echoing your head and it's coming along with baggage. That's a big part of this too,
And
is that a lot
doubt.
of us have doubt. Yes. We have doubt, we have baggage about our own intelligence, our own ability to understand our bodies, about touching our vulvas, touching your vagina, touching your cervix, observing down there what it may look like. And some of us, I mean, I had so many hangups about this simply from like being around boys or girls sometimes that would talk badly about other people. Like, I'm throwing these guys under the bus again. They are not like this anymore, but there's this family that I grew up with that had four boys, and my sister married one of them. And when I was like a tween, like early middle school age, the older boys were like talking about how disgusting it is if like a girl has body hair, like if she has like
Mhm.
pubic hair or armpit hair or leg hair, that it's like disgusting, and like any guy who saw that would like throw up and like run screaming out of the room because it's like so disgusting that you would have hair. And
Mhm.
I'm a like dark-haired Italian lady who's like growing a mustache in the 5th grade. So I was horrified by this. And then there was just like times in school where other girls would be like, ew, Fatima, ugh, she's so hairy. Or like, ew, have you seen her arms? No, blah, blah, blah. And just mocking people for looking a certain way, being a certain way. And then, of course, there were the girls that have like probably a rough home life and bad
Mhm.
BO and like not
Mhm.
very good knowing when they're on their period and just
Mhm.
not very clean. And I look back and I'm so sad for their lives that they didn't have somebody being like, let me help you. But anyway, it can give you a lot of fear and disgust about what's happening between your legs, that it's
Mhm.
smelly, that it's hairy, that it's gross, it's wet, it's, just turn off the lights and close the doors and have sex if you must. But you better not let anyone like touch or taste or smell down there because it's just horrible unless you have this infantile looking vagina like you see in porn. And that is gross and not good and not even good for you. Let me tell you something. Your body has hair for a reason. In my opinion, at this point in my career, girl, the more the better. If the girls that are like constantly waxing and shaving and stuff, those are the ones that I'm seeing with these like endometritis infections, like in bacterial issues that are, these germs are allowed to like get into their vaginas because this barrier of hair, which works as like a biofilm of your own and an actual physical barrier of your own good bacteria, has been ripped away by the esthetician or zapped away with the laser
Add
or
that
shaved
to
away.
a healthy dose of hormonal contraceptives, stopping you from making cervical mucus and helping a key
Boy,
component of cleaning and keeping your vagina healthy. Like,
yeah, it's
Lord,
no
what
wonder
are we
that.
doing to women who
Mhm.
have BV and yeast one after another after another? You know, this is a part of your body just like hair is a part of your body on the top of your head.
Right?
This is a part of your
Like, you
body.
gotta floss your teeth. Are you gonna floss your teeth? Are you gonna clean your ears?
Like, let's just
Are
get
you
to
gonna
know it.
get a
Let's be
goop out of your
curious.
eye?
Yeah, and and listen, if it's itchy, smelly, if it's not clear or white, if it's yellow, like something is going on and go see the doctor,
Mhm,
okay? Like cervical mucus should not make you itch, smell, it shouldn't come out looking like you have a cold and you have snot in your nose. Like it should be clear or at the most when it's
mhm.
thicker, white. Okay. We're not looking
Yeah.
for like if it's yellowy or greeny, something's going on. You have some sort of infection.
Mhm,
If it smells fishy or like you could bake bread down there, something else is going on. Like go see your
mhm,
doctor or get the EVI test. Like test your bacterial and the different colonies that are forming down there. But in the absence of acute conditions, fluid, and especially this, like, you blow your nose when you have allergies and it's clear, but it's thick and gooey. That is the stuff, girlfriend. And you're
That's the
listening to
baby
this.
juice right there. That's the
Yeah,
secret sauce.
you're trying to get pregnant. Like, that is what we're looking for. That, and to some degree, copious amounts of it, hopefully, because it is
Mhm.
literally the counterpart for sperm to make it up through your cervix and on its way, like rocketed towards your fallopian tube to meet
Yes.
the egg.
As far as I'm concerned, there's no such thing as too much. I mean, it's the more the better. There is such a thing as too frequently. That can happen. Caitlin, could you talk about that? About
Yeah.
gals with PCOS seeing this all
Yeah,
the time?
absolutely. I mean, gals with PCOS, maybe even gals that don't have PCOS, but that have high levels of insulin resistance, but it's not like
Mhm.
overt or frankly PCOS. There's some inner change that happens when your body is frequently creating, or kind of not creating, pulling from your kind of resting, sleeping follicles that are waiting to grow enough, big enough someday to be ovulated. And specifically in a PCOS ovary, there are a handful of those follicles that get stuck in this maturing point that's like, think of like pre-puberty or pubescent. You're not fully mature enough to do the big things in life, like vote or drive or go to college, live on your own. It's not that follicle that's going to get ovulated, but it's stuck in this kind of like annoying, uncomfortable phase
Yeah,
of life.
teenage follicle.
Yes. And this follicle is still doing a great job at making estrogen. They're typically in PCOS also doing a fabulous job of making testosterone, further complicating the process of maturing. But as Sophia said earlier, your cervical mucus, and what we're about to transition to talking cervical position, is greatly impacted by the hormones that you're creating within your ovary, estrogen and progesterone. Yes, you can make different forms of these in different places and they can interchange, but the huge signaling that's happening from the ovary itself, local to and very close to your cervix, is creating this interplay that's telling your body we're getting ready to ovulate. There's so much of this estrogen. As estrogen spikes, tells your brain to make luteinizing hormone, and then you guys ovulate. Well, we're getting a lot of that input without a follicle that's actually maturing to be ovulated. And so you have
Mhm.
all this extra estrogen signaling, we're going to ovulate. And so you may see consistent and large amounts of quality cervical mucus where it comes for 3 or 4 days and then you dry up or it becomes loose but still present. And then you have another pattern of it and it happens over and over and over again, but you never get like completely dry. And we cannot correlate it with your chart where you've been doing basal body temping, which you
Mhm.
hopefully listened to that episode before this one, where we're looking for that shift that's indicating progesterone is being made. We know we've ovulated. That progesterone, again, harkening back to the beginning of the episode, is what thickens up the cervical mucus and helps it become kind of gummy and then feel drier as you're getting closer and closer to either menstruation or your body being like, hey, we're pregnant, make lots more of the progesterone. And it is that thick kind of filling the hole within the cervix so nothing can get through. So
Mhm.
as we're kind of moving through the cycle that we never ovulate in, or it takes weeks, months to ovulate in, you may see pattern after pattern after pattern of quality, very fertile looking cervical mucus. And that can be hard and frustrating because you're like, if I was ovulating that much, I definitely would be pregnant by now. But that seems to be the problem. And this could be a sign that you're not ovulating at all. I see it
Mhm.
highly correlative to AMH levels, higher than normal AMH levels. So that's like kind of a way to tie in your lab work to what you're seeing symptomatically within your body. I also see it correlate pretty high to, like, if somebody goes in and has an ultrasound and gets told that they have high levels of um, like high amounts of follicles on one or both ovary, like,
Yeah, the string of pearls around the
yes,
ovary.
if
Mhm.
that's like a really present thing for you right now, because in PCOS, those aren't always there. They can come and they go depending on how well your PCOS is at that moment, or where you are in your cycle, or did you just come off of birth control, et cetera. And so this pattern can be really kind of like exciting and then very frustrating, because you're like, but I'm never seeing it go away and the corresponding temp shift up. But the good news in that case is we can start making really quality and informed interventions to help your follicles, to help your ovary. And so that's part of why Sophia and I want you to start tracking this and learn, is because we can then intervene and we can take that information and make informed decisions about care based on it.
It's very, very true. And you can also have, like, I have a client right now, Caitlin has probably seen this a bunch of times too, where they're told they don't have PCOS because they don't see this string of pearls, or this, many, many partially matured follicles on the ovary. They don't see the androgens really high. And maybe they're just not ovulating very frequently or very robustly. But there is insulin resistance happening. There's an AMH super high. The LH to FSH ratio is all out of whack. Like, there's things happening. There's really high prolactin. Like, there are things happening outside of that classical PCOS diagnostic criteria that are, in my opinion, additional symptoms of PCOS. But like what Caitlin said, unless your ovaries are looking just this one specific way on the day that they scan, unless your testosterone is at a certain level, they're not going to diagnose you. Unless you are proving that you are not ovulating, you're not going to get this diagnosis. And so you may not get the care. Well, frankly, even if you get the diagnosis, you're probably not going to get the care you need. But I digress. It'll be even harder for you to get quality treatment for what's really going on with these tests that you have to, like, go to a doctor and see. But if you in your home are listening to this and hearing, I am this lady who's seeing like fertile mucus and then not, and then I do, and then I don't, and then I don't know what the hell's happening, you may have really well managed PCOS to where it's not going to show up. And this is also why we see gals that were like 3-sport athletes in high school, or played a sport in college, or were like super active. And then they have, or maybe not even super active, just a healthy, regular gal who's like regularly active, who then has a life event happen, like an injury or a death in the family, a stressful event or something, suddenly gains 40 pounds and can't get pregnant, and is now like, oh, I guess I developed PCOS when I was 33. No, it was just well managed for all these years. But the only way a doctor can know is looking at these tests, but you can know in your own home, looking at your cervical mucus, what may or may not be happening with you. And that's another reason why this is so vital.
Hey friends, we're taking a break from this episode so I can share with you a little more about one of our sponsors, Fullwell. Fullwell's a reproductive health company offering superior nutritional supplements that are made without compromise to support women and men throughout their reproductive journey. I have taken Fullwell's prenatals, their fish oil, and have literally tried every product they've released, and I stand behind this recommendation with my whole heart. One of my favorite things to recommend to clients is their Fertility Trio. This includes their egg and sperm quality supplement, their women's prenatal, and fish oil. This helps proactively support you getting ready to conceive. This trio includes things like CoQ10, ashwagandha, and NAC. It makes me think of a life vest. You don't want to go into pregnancy without these foundational supports. And if you've been struggling while trying to conceive, this is the time to upgrade your prenatal fertility game and check out Fullwell. Use code FFF20 today to get 20% off your first order. So the key takeaways, if we look at this from a lens of fertility, are we want to see variability. We don't want it only to look fertile. We don't want it to only look thick and or thin and watery. We don't want it only to look gummy and like almost like you took old lotion and kind of balled it up in between your fingers. We want
like
variability.
the dried part on the conditioner bottle.
Like 2 or 3 days at the least, maybe 5 at the most of quality looking, maybe increasing in amounts of fertile cervical mucus.
Excuse me.
And then we want to see that kind of coming to an end that's corresponding with a higher basal body temperature. That's how we're going to kind of put this as well as basal body temperature together to complement one another. The beautiful thing about cervical mucus is that it's your body's own way to communicate to you, you are fertile now, go have all the sex, right? Basal
Mm-hmm.
body temperature does not predict when ovulation is going to happen. Over time, you can see trends. My cycles are typically this long. I usually ovulate here because you've tracked for a few months and we can draw conclusions. But it's not going to definitively tell you this next cycle you will ovulate day 16 because you did these past. But cervical mucus, you start seeing, okay, I have a tendency to ovulate on day 16 or 17. I see cervical mucus is starting right now on day 12. Okay, I'm right in that pocket of in the next few days, we should expect ovulation to happen based on what I saw historically. And now I see this thick, kind of clear, almost like you're snotty, but with not an infection type fluid coming from your vagina. And then you're like, okay, that I think it's time to get it on. Or in Sophia's case right now, where she needs a period of healing before she can get pregnant again, she is potentially still trying to conceive, but maybe not this month. Or maybe, like
Yes.
I have this trip to Europe next month and I don't want to be nauseous for 6 weeks as I'm traveling through the Alps or whatever. Like this is not the right time. That's the time that you say, hey, let's wrap it up. Or like
Yeah.
what's our plan to not get pregnant this month? For those of you that are listening to this,
Before you start banging, get the plan,
yeah,
okay? Don't
if
be
you've
like
listened to
me.
Sophia's
Don't be like
story.
me and my husband. Oh, God bless baby Dot coming from that union. Oh, I just revealed the name. That's what we named the baby we lost was Dot.
Dot, like
That's her name.
Dottie.
Yeah, we learned out that's my grandma's name was Dottie.
I
And
love that.
she was
What
just a
else was
little
it
Dot.
called? Dot. Hmm.
She was our little Dot.
We loved you, little Dot.
We did love you, little Dot. I'm so sorry I couldn't take you further. I carried you as far as I could.
Yeah.
And then that was it.
So tell me,
Okay,
mother
cue
of
sad
little Dot.
trombone.
Mother of little Dot. Will you tell me why, if somebody tracks BBT, why, if somebody tracks CM, we're going to start calling cervical mucus CM now. Why do they care about CP? And what does CP stand
Cervical
for?
position.
Mm-hmm.
Well, here is the reason why you care. Anything that's important in life needs a certain level of redundancy. You know what I'm talking? You guys remember like 5 years ago when Hawaii got this like alert that Korea had launched a nuke at them and it was like, scared the bejesus out of everybody because it was like, this is not a test. A nuke really got launched. That happened because their warning system lacked redundancy. They didn't have like several authentication factors. It's like kind of like when you're logging into your computer or logging into your email from a different computer and it makes you have to enter your password and enter in the code that gets sent to your phone. That's what we're building in here to your fertility is multi-factor authentication because your basal body temperature, while very reliable, is not foolproof. You can be traveling time zones. You could be sick. You could have slept in. You could have time change. Like there are a lot of different factors that are going to impact your basal body temperature.
Mm-hmm.
It's still worthwhile to measure, but we need a level of redundancy.
Mm-hmm.
That's where cervical mucus comes in because now we're looking at, is it slippery? Is it lotiony? Is it dry? Is it crumbly? Is it blood? What's happening here? But that can also be skewed at times, like what Caitlin was saying with the PCOS symptom of consistently seeing fertile mucus. You can't just think, oh, well, then I ovulated and be like,
Mm-hmm.
because I've heard people say that I ovulate 7 or 8 times per cycle. And I'm like, oh, no, you don't. But they think they do because they see fertile mucus that many times.
Let's speak to that. Can you
Okay.
ovulate more than once. And caveat, like, there are twins. There are sometimes two fraternal follicles that get expelled. But
Yeah.
like, would you ovulate now and then 3 days from now or 5 days from now?
No. It's
Why not?
statistically improbable, medically impossible, but maybe there is like one freak instance where this happened sometime because we're people and not machines. But that's a great question. So once your body pops out an egg out of the follicle, releases it out of the follicle turns into a brand new organ called the corpus luteum. And immediately, I'm telling you, immediately, it releases a chemical signal that sort of like spoils all the other eggs, which is crazy to think about, but it is real. And if you've ever done IVF and had a breakthrough ovulation, you know that this is real and devastated your life at that point because you did everything to get ready for an egg retrieval and then ovulated naturally, which spoiled all the other eggs that you were trying to grow. So, your body will make it to where the other eggs become inviable. They can't continue to develop. And now the place where the egg used to be on your ovary, where the follicle has now ruptured, becomes this new organ called the corpus luteum, which will continue to pulse out progesterone and tell your body to prepare for a pregnancy instead of prepare for an ovulation. This prevents all other ovulations from happening. Now, I'm not going to say that in all the history of humanity, there's never been an instance where just the right mistakes happened in each part of this cycle to where maybe an egg got released a few days later, because I'm sure in some medical textbook somewhere that has happened. But it is so increasingly, exceedingly rare that we don't really need to look at that as a significant possibility. But when we talk about like using a fertility awareness method, if symptothermal fertility awareness method, and how this is like 98.9998% effective, this is the reason why. Is
Mhm.
because you essentially cannot re-ovulate after you've already ovulated once that cycle.
Mhm.
And that 0.11% or whatever, that's the statistical possibility of your body doing some sort of funky chicken dance to where it pops off an egg out of completely random time. But for the most part, and for our purposes today, once you have ovulated, your fertile window is now closed until you have either given birth or menstruated.
Yeah, you've got
And
like
that's
12 to
how this
24
works.
hours for egg to meet sperm, or
Hmm.
it's donezo, opportunity's gone. And this
Yeah.
is probably one of the most compelling reasons to tell you to start tracking these things,
Hmm.
because it's, unless you're having sex every day or every other day from like day 5 of your cycle until you have your next period, you may miss this window. Like, I think statistics are that most couples have sex 1 to 2 times per week. So if you're on
Hmm.
that 2 times per week, this may not happen to you, but 1 time per week, you could you could very easily miss your fertile window. If you're only relying on apps to tell you based on historical data how long your cycle was, that you're probably going to ovulate around this time and you're in your high fertility window, or LH strips, which are ovulation predictor kit strips, to tell you this one hormone surged. And so you'll probably ovulate in the next 36 hours, have sex. We've really shut down a huge part of your fertile window intimacy opportunity, and we
Hmm.
we don't want to take that away from you, because, and I should probably reshare this post along with when we publish this episode, but like, if you look at documented times of intercourse and when it yielded a pregnancy, the day before ovulation is the day that has the highest impact on pregnancy if you have sex the day before
Hmm.
ovulation. But close behind that is 2 days before ovulation. And that would be before an LH test would
Hmm.
show that you're about to ovulate. And in that sense, your body should have already been telling you with quality cervical mucus. So
Yes.
it can be predictive in a way that BBT cannot be, and that can give you more of kind of like a runway right before takeoff, right before ovulation. Because if you've never heard this before, we want sperm inside your body up the fallopian tube by the time you ovulate. We want it like there waiting for this egg to come.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to, oh my gosh, I just ovulated, go have sex. That doesn't
Yeah.
give you the best chance. This cervical mucus has been documented, though this may be at the far end of a window, that it can keep sperm alive and healthy for 5 days. So if you see fertile cervical
Mm-hmm.
mucus for 4 days before you actually document ovulation and a temperature shift, sex in any point in time there can yield pregnancy, which is
Mm-hmm.
so encouraging and so great.
It's so encouraging and so great. And you have very little to lose because we're just having sex with the person you love and want to have a family with. So it's not
Mhm.
really like we're asking you to do anything so awful. But I also understand that maybe, I mean, not every woman enjoys penetrative sex. And maybe when you're usually having sex, you're doing more like oral or vulva stimulation. And you're maybe not putting penis in vagina because you don't like that very much. And that's okay. There's a lot of different ways to get off, girlfriend. So let me tell you, or maybe he doesn't like it that much. I don't know what you guys like to do. I pray it's not because it's painful, because that's not normal, and there is things we can do to fix that. But if it's just that you guys don't really prefer that, and so you kind of do need to like look at your fertile window because you're gonna have
Different kinds of
penetrative
sex.
sex,
Mhm.
which isn't usually your favorite
Mhm.
during that time, then this is really valuable because we're not forcing you to do something that you don't prefer sexually again and again and again and again all cycle long, just for the
Mhm.
sake of trying to make a baby, not just for the sake of pleasure.
Mhm.
So it's worth noting. So why don't we talk about cervical position, because we've sort of stepped around it.
Yeah.
The reason we're doing this last is I think, in my opinion, it's the hardest one to measure, the hardest one to understand, because it's sort of foreign. We're not used to going off of touch for things. We're used to like seeing it, hearing it, smelling it, like feeling something and knowing whether it's more or less or bigger or
It
smaller,
feels
softer or firmer.
subjective.
Like, it's very subjective, and there actually are pelvic floor injuries like prolapse that can make this really hard because your muscles are not very doing very well downstairs. And so your cervix is lower down in your vagina, sort of like at
Mhm.
all times. And so then it's hard to tell, is it higher or lower? Like, what's it doing in compared to what it was, because it's not functioning the way
Mhm.
that
Or you
you
have
would have wanted it.
endometriosis and
I was
weird
about to say that.
adhesions that are gonna pull it one way
Yeah.
or the other. Mhm.
Yes, yes. And if you want to hear more about that, you can listen to our Caitlin Dillon episode where
Mhm.
she talks about how she couldn't even get an IUI. They couldn't even get the tube up through her cervix because it turns out what was endometriosis was pulling her cervix in a weird L shape.
Mhm.
And so if that's you, and that was me as well before my surgery, my cervix wouldn't move up and down. It wasn't able to respond to the hormones in my body as readily as someone who didn't have these endometriosis lesions
Mhm.
sticking her organs together. But let's just say you don't have this, or maybe you do have endometriosis, but it's not in this one particular space reacting to your body this one particular way. Putting your fingers into your vagina and touching your cervix, which is going to feel sort of like touching the tip of your chin or like the tip of your nose,
We're both touching
which
our
is just
chins
sort
and
of a
noses.
yeah, touch your chin, touch your nose right now. That's sort of what it feels like. Is like this sort of cartilagey, rubbery
Muscly almost.
surface. Yeah, like yeah, but like it's clear that you've reached a dead end. It's no
Mhm.
longer that like spongy, stretchy, almost sort of numb vaginal tissue.
Mhm.
It's something distinctly different.
Mhm.
And it's round, sort of donut shaped with a little divot hole in the middle.
Mhm.
And I would encourage you to look up some pictures of human cervixes so you can visualize what it is you are trying to feel.
Mhm.
That way it's not, a total mystery, as if, we're trying to describe to you what a kitten looks like, but you've never seen one before and you're just feeling around in a box full of
Mhm.
kittens wondering what you're going to touch.
I like
Which
to
actually sounds quite lovely, feeling around a box full of kittens. I would like to do that.
I used to like to recommend this. My life is so different. I don't shower daily anymore. But I used to shower a lot and I would work out a lot, which would, even if I didn't like wash my hair, I'd hop in the shower and rinse off.
Yeah.
And I would really like to, first of all, you want clean hands. We're not trying to introduce
Hello. Clean
bacteria
hands,
or anything.
trimmed nails,
Yeah.
everyone.
Yeah.
Okay. If your gel set is 4 weeks old and is looking a little crusty, not the time.
Yeah. Sophia and I, to become dietitians, had to go through a lot of food service training. I worked in food service
Hmm.
positions. And one of the things way back in the day, you weren't allowed to have painted nails, but you certainly weren't allowed to have like an acrylic or add on nail that made your nail longer because of the bacteria and things that can hang out underneath your nail bed. So,
Yeah, or even just like along that little divot where your nail has
mhm,
grown in the like acrylic or gel or whatever
mhm.
it is like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
yuck.
So you want clean hands and not like the crazy librarian lady when I was a kindergartner who had just like freakishly long acrylics.
Yeah.
And then
The
you
TSA agent
mhm,
tapping the keyboard with her long,
mhm,
long nails.
totally. Oh, it's a whole person I can imagine. I like to do it in the shower, but now I do it not in the shower. And I take 2 fingers, usually my longest 2, but also my pointer because that's the one that I have the most like feeling to kind of, and usually my middle
Yeah.
finger, and I insert my fingers up and inside of my vagina, my labia, and up into my vagina. Okay.
Hmm.
I like to describe the feeling from the inside, not the feeling at the edges of my fingers, but like as you just get inside of your vagina and feel around the walls, it's like, oh, if your like tongue pokes the inside of your cheek, it doesn't feel like
Hmm.
much, right?
Hmm.
But like think about what it feels like when the doctor is like pushing the like popsicle stick on your tongue to look back at your throat. That's like a much more distinct feeling, okay? So there's two
Hmm.
different kinds of feelings. When you're feeling just the inside of your vagina, it's like, oh, there's like pressure there and there's muscle there, but it doesn't hurt, it doesn't feel good. It's just like there. When you get to
Hmm.
your cervix, it should not hurt either. You should be able to kind of feel you've reached what Sophia described as a dead end. And a lot of times when we describe this, if you're watching us on YouTube, it's like you're going up, but you're actually kind of going in and backwards a little bit.
And back. Yeah.
And the feeling when you get to your cervix from the inside is going to feel a lot different than when you are on the walls of your vagina. Almost like I like to describe it with a sound like, oh, it's not bad, it's not good, it's not pain, shouldn't be painful, but it's like, oh, I
Urethra. Eureka.
you've reached like this something else and there's more feeling all of a sudden. That is
Yes.
how I like to
Yeah.
describe it. And you'll get better at this. And you may find yourself starting this in the middle of a cycle where it's a lot harder to get to. So, Sophia,
Hmm.
will you kind of take over and explain how it's going to feel and why this is a signal at different parts of your cycle? What's going on?
Absolutely. So let's start from day one of your cycle when you are menstruating. Your cervix is going to feel open and sort of softer because it has relaxed a bit to let all that menstrual flow through. So you're going to feel more sort of like your chin feeling. And yeah, so that's what it's going to sort of feel like when you're touching your chin or touching the tip of your nose. Now, as your cycle progresses and estrogen begins to rise and ovulation begins to unfold, you're getting ready to ovulate, Your body, remember, wants to procreate, wants to get pregnant. So your cervix is going to rise within you, lift up, 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 and it is going to open. It's going to begin to feel more like purse your lips together, like you're going to give a big kiss. It's going to feel more like your lips, softer and a bit of an opening in the middle instead of just hard like the tip of your nose with no real opening. That is because your body wants to accommodate a penis getting as deep as possible into your vagina to increase the chances of sperm getting to the egg. So it's going to soften, rise, and open. That's what estrogen does. And that's what you're going to see if you're still in a excitable PCOS state. If your PCOS is really popping, then you're going to see this sort of open, soft cervix because your body's trying so hard to ovulate all the time. But if you feel that, that is the sign that you're getting ready to ovulate or you're ovulating. Open, soft, lengthened high up in your vagina.
And
This is
lengthened
your body.
means your fingers are going like
Your fingers have to
so
go
far in,
further up
further
to
in.
find it.
Mhm.
Trying to accommodate a penis
Mhm.
because your body wants to get pregnant. So you're going to need to rise your fingers up higher to feel it. It'll be softer and more open, and you'll have plenty of mucus when you reach your fingers back out. Now, after ovulation, your body says the baby shop is closed. And so your cervix is going to squeeze back shut. It is going to firm up and is going to lower down into your vagina, basically sealing off your uterus from the outside world. And this is also, you may have noticed this sexually, like there are probably times when you've been able to enjoy deep penetration where you're doing like doggy style or you're on top and you're able to like bounce around and have all kinds of fun. And then a couple days later you try to do the same thing and you're like, "Oh god, it's like, you're thrusting into my diaphragm, like it feels like your penis is like hitting my ribs. Like I can't handle that deep of penetration." Now his penis didn't change sizes. What happened was your vagina length has changed. Now there is something called tenting that happens during arousal where your vagina will lengthen to accommodate a penis, but your cervical position has a lot to do with how long that tenting will be. So, if you have noticed that there's been times when you were really able to enjoy penetration, and then a few days earlier, a few days later than that, it's like suddenly it's very uncomfortable, almost painful. You don't like that anymore.
Mhm.
It can be that you ovulated. And so now your vagina just is not as long because your cervix is lower down, closed, and firm and
Mhm.
much less comfortable to be touched also. In your ovulation window, your cervix is much more malleable, less sensitive. There can even be pleasurable sensations coming from your cervix.
Mhm.
Whereas later in your cycle, your body is like, don't touch me, mother ever. Like, don't get near me. I am the sentry. I am the guard of this area, and I don't want anything getting in here. So don't bug me. And sends off
Mhm.
a warning signal of pain if it's touched because it's like, don't come at me. Don't come at me, bro. So, yeah, the door is closed. Don't go there. That's sort of as your estrogen is rising and then falling, and then progesterone is rising, are the major drivers of your cervical position. And again, we're
Mhm.
layering this multi step authentication, right? So we have the basal body temperature, we have the cervical mucus, and now we have the cervical position. And with these three combined, you are able to get a very accurate view of what is happening hormonally in your body on any given day.
We are going to take a break from this episode and chat a little bit about one of our sponsors. Truth be told, when we were contacted by Fond to see if they could sponsor our Food Freedom Fertility podcast, it kind of was like one of those dream come true sponsorships. Let me explain why. There are very few foundational foods that cover broad nutrient needs for fertility, gut health, and baby's brain development like Fond is. And not only do they create these foundational foods, they kind of exceed in every category that I can think of what we want to put into our bodies. They're the only verified regenerative through land to market bone broth, tallow, and lard on the market. Unparalleled animal sourcing, all pasture raised, or 100% grass fed and finished cattle. All the herbs and vegetables that are in the blends and the seasonings of these broths and lard are exclusively organic. Nothing is packaged in plastic. The entire packaging process is plastic free from kitchen to their shipping materials. When I think about this regenerative fat line that they've just introduced to the market, I use it in so many different ways. I've used their pork lard that's flavored with cinnamon and vanilla when I've been sauteing apples to put in my children's oatmeal. I've used their regenerative beef tallow that's flavored with chili and garlic as I've sauteed meat that's going to go into a slow cooked pho style dish. And then I've used their broth within that dish itself. I love the flavor combinations. I love that I can trust that these foods that I'm putting in my body are so clean but truly delicious. The infused flavors are ready to sip, and all the fun flavors can be used to take any dish from good to gourmet. I've been using these for the last 4 or 5 months every single day and have seen a huge difference in my own health. And I know this is our fertility podcast, but we started taking on Fond as a sponsor at the same exact time that my dad got diagnosed with esophageal cancer. And I had so much peace in these moments where he could hardly eat anything that he was sipping on a bone broth that had so much gelatin and collagen and amino acids that I knew we were reducing inflammation in his body and giving him just these beautiful, naturally occurring electrolytes and protein that was so easy to get down. This is one of my most favorite products I've ever used in my kitchen. And I am so proud that we get to partner with Fond. Fond has generously given us a coupon code for their website where you can receive 10% off. So that's FFF10. Or if you click on the link in our show notes, it actually brings you to a landing page where the discount is baked right in, and some of Sophia's and my favorite products are hanging out on that page for you to peruse. Please give this brand a try. Please support them. If you haven't listened to our episode with Alyssa, you are just gonna scream at how incredible this brand is and what they've come through, supporting a woman founded business that has your health and our planet's best interest at heart. It's something that I can't be more proud that we get to partner with, and they sponsor you getting this free fertility information straight to your phone every single week. Now back to our episode. And so, if somebody's listening to this, they've listened to the BBT, they've heard us talk about
Mm-hmm.
CM, and now they're hearing cervical positioning. What would you say if somebody is like, I don't want to do that? Do they need to do this third one?
I wouldn't say you need to, because I'm so hesitant to tell anyone who's trying to conceive one
You
more
need to
damn
do,
thing that
yeah.
they have to be doing,
Mm-hmm.
frankly. So if there is one to sort of let fall by the wayside, I would say this would be the one that maybe you don't have to do. But I would so recommend you do it, at least for
Mm-hmm.
a couple cycles, to
Oh,
learn and to know what's going on. But let's say you've been doing it for like 8 months and you're still not pregnant and you're sick of doing it, then I would say this is one that if you're going to take like a partial break, this would be the one you could maybe take a break from.
yeah, I feel like, in my opinion, if you want to take these one at a time or all three sound like very overwhelming, doing BBT and adding in cervical mucus is going to tell you a lot.
A lot.
And
Oh, yeah.
then maybe consider this as like, okay, I'm adding in it all.
Hmm. Just so that there's multiple authentication, whatever, I don't know how to pronounce it,
Mm-hmm.
factors
Mm-hmm.
in your cycle to where you're far less likely to have a mistake or an error in one of the areas result
Mhm.
in the whole cycle being like some big unsolvable mystery.
But let's talk about a scenario where it's really helpful. You're trying to get pregnant, you see quality cervical mucus, you're used to tracking your cervical position. So you know the difference of when it's really low and when it's very high. You know the difference of when it feels softer and more open versus kind of
Hmm.
harder and more closed. And you see a slow rise in your BBT, and you're like, huh, was that ovulation? Still a little wet with your cervical mucus. Can't like draw a firm conclusion off of that. But then you feel inside of you, and all of a sudden, what was very high and back almost hard to reach is
Hmm.
now very low. Your cervical
Hmm.
position has shifted down. So now we can
Even
add,
like it can happen like overnight. It can
yeah,
happen pretty quick.
it can happen really quickly. So you're just adding one more layer of data, and data helps. There's few
It does.
instances where having extra data is going to be not helpful when we're talking about
Hmm.
timing sex for getting pregnant. So I think we should button up this episode, and maybe our next episode we jump off from what could these three signs together tell us if something's maybe not right, a little bit more on that,
Mm.
and
Yeah, outliers and
outliers. And
illnesses and stuff.
yeah, and like expert tips that once you kind of have the basics of understanding what these things are, what questions you might have that we can answer, like frequently asked questions. And also, like, what could this be telling us that we might want to do something about? So stay tuned for that
Okay.
next episode. And let's top this thing off with some yeah girls. Let's celebrate something.
Yeah, girl, I've got one.
Okay, let's go.
You guys are
Yeah.
gonna think this is so dumb. But this was fun for me. So this past weekend was the time change. So we woke up really way too late to make it to church. And we just figured, whatever. Our church, we go to a really small church that has one service.
Mhm.
And so it was too late. We missed it. All right, whatever. We decided we would go to my husband's old work on base. And they have this like big, like turf lawn with like outdoor workout equipment. And on the weekends, it's really family friendly because we just like bring our kids scooters and like magnetiles and they just play and catch lizards and look at bugs and what all. And my husband and I work out. So as we're pulling into the parking lot, we just so happened to go to a different parking lot than the one we usually go to because they'd paved a new road. And we're like, well, let's take the new road. So we go to this different parking lot. And there is this totally beautiful 1995 Toyota Land Cruiser sitting there in the parking lot. And so my husband and I were both like, damn, as we drive past this thing, like that is such a cool vehicle. And so I'm like looking at it. We park, I get out, and Louie's like, don't look too close. There's a guy sitting in there. And I was like, oh, I'm going to look close and I'm going to go talk to this guy. And my husband's like, oh, Jesus, like, Sophia, why do you always have to bother everyone? Because he's
Mhm.
such an introvert that like
Mhm.
somebody talking to him, like, oh God, how will we ever? And so I like talked to this guy and I was like, this is such a sweet ride. He's like, yeah, isn't it? I love it. I actually got it from Japan. And so I get to talking to this guy and he tells me this whole process of how he got this vehicle from Japan and he was like, you want to give it a ride? And I was like, hell yeah. So I drove this thing all around base. Me and Stu is this guy's name. So me and Stu are driving all around base in
Where you
this
can't
thing. And
speed. Like,
yeah, you can't speed,
you
but you
can't.
can go over. There was like off-road areas
Mhm.
and he had his sort of tricked out. Like it had like mud tires on it and had like a lift kit and things I would never do to it if it were
Mhm.
mine. But he's, single guy, Navy man, whatever. This is what he likes to do with his money. So this is what he did. And so I drove it all around and then we come back and then my husband got to give it a ride. So we all piled in, our kids and everybody. We drive all around and we ended up like totally befriending this guy. He came over a couple nights ago for dinner and he's like this really fun awesome dude. And he has got the hookup on how to get these vehicles into the US on the cheap. And
Oh.
there's like a bunch of weird loopholes, like you can't have it registered in California because California is very sad to live in. But like other states have more options. And so he's from Utah originally. So he like told us how he got, the Utah registration for it. And we're hopefully moving to Idaho within the next 10 years. Who the hell knows when we'll make it out there. But
Don't move to
it was
Idaho,
just
move to
super
Kansas.
fun. I'd love to. All right. I'd love to go anywhere. But it was really fun. And I got to drive this car and I got to really have a visual on what I wanted, because all my years I've been thinking what I wanted was like an old Jeep Wrangler, like Jurassic Park style
Mhm.
kind of thing, which is so impractical as a mom.
Mhm.
But it was just going to be like my fun car, my like postmenopausal dream. But now the dream is this Land Cruiser. And because it has optional third row seating, and because it's just such a tank, like this thing weighs like 8,000 pounds. This is the vehicle you want to be in on a snowy road, on an
Mhm.
icy road.
Mhm.
I was thinking I want to go minivan next if we have a third kid, but God, Caitlin, you've seen it. How many times when you see a disabled vehicle on the side of the road in the snow, is it a minivan? Like damn near 100% of the time.
Actually,
They're like,
no, I haven't seen it a lot, and I love my
oh, I
minivan.
see it all the time. I love minivans too. I do. And I'm not dumping on the minivan. I'm dumping on, they just don't.
I
When
don't
I
know.
see
We have a
breakdowns, it's always the damn minivan, is what I
granted
see.
granted, I live where it snows usually like 3 inches at the most, although we got like 8 this year, and I drove just as great as the rest of them in my little minivan. So, I don't know.
There you go. And so I very well may get the minivan. I
They're
mean,
so
it's so
nice.
practical.
Oh, they're so
And
great.
this is not the most practical. It's a like
Gas
two
hog.
liter diesel. It's a diesel. So it's, yeah, but it will go forever. It's like truly the most reliable engine Toyota has ever built.
That's cool.
And I mean, like, Toyota makes the most reliable engines like ever
Mhm.
known to man. It's not perfect, but it's great. And so, and the fact that this guy,
Has the
he
hookup,
bought
and
it
now
for
he's your
10
best friend.
grand. Yeah, and he's so cool and he loves my kids. And this gonna Louie and I just
Is
think
he
this guy's like
tall?
the coolest.
Is he so tall?
He's taller than me. I think he's tall.
I have so
I think he's
many
probably, I would
single
say he's maybe like
friends.
6'1".
Mm.
Yeah, dude, I have been racking my brain for
Do you
like
know
who are
all
the
the
single
dudes and I know
gals.
all the women? They're just all in
It
Kansas.
just might be. Here's the thing
Mm.
though, he's
Let's
in
play
his very
matchmaker.
early 30s. And so all the gals I know that are like single are like pushing 40. And
Mm.
so this guy who's like from a big family, wants to have a lot of kids, like he probably wouldn't open himself up to the nearly 40-year-old gal because he wants,
Lots of kids.
likely the younger gal that wants to have lots of kids.
Mhm.
So, I've known this guy for like not even a week. So I'm like matchmaking for him. Anyway, he is cool and I got to drive his cool car and it made me really excited about moving and the sort of this new chapter of life that we're going to do. And it was really cool to see my husband excited about something because he is
Mm.
usually pretty stoic. So it was fun. So thanks to, you'll never listen to this, but it was fun driving your car. Oh, also, he lives on a yacht and he invited us to go swimming off of his yacht once it warms up.
Wow. What a friend.
I know. I know. What a cool guy. I'm pumped.
Um, man. Yeah, girl. Fun.
Yeah, it was fun. It was so fun. Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, I want to have a baby. And the doctor looks at you and says, good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant. And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today.
I'm trying to think of what I want my next girl to be. And just like what comes to mind for me right now is that I've talked about this recently. I went to California and saw a friend and helped her through having a hip replacement. She recently has this boyfriend, and they care a lot about me. This friend that I went to see, I would say, is like one of my best friends in my whole life, even though she's my mom's age. And I don't say that like even though like that should be wrong or weird. It's really lovely actually to have a
Oh,
friend.
yeah.
Like we complement each other
Different
well
stage
in
of
ways.
life
Yeah,
and has
it's
seen more. Yeah.
yeah, and I've known her since I was 14, I think. So I've known her through a lot, but I've never known her to have a boyfriend. And this boyfriend is so fun. He's of Indian descent, but when stuff happened in India like 80 years ago, they kind of, as they kicked the UK or Britain out, they kind of ch- changed the country lines based on religion. So if you were Hindu, you were like in India. And if you were Muslim, you went to East or West Pakistan. And so he's Pakistani, and he is about her age, and he is just this like firecracker of an individual, and I have fallen deeply in love with him and just enjoy him so much. And he was married, and his wife passed recently of cancer, and he kind of rekindled this
Horrible.
friendship with my friend, who they knew each other 50 years ago in San Francisco in the hippie days. And they rekindled their friendship, and now they're dating. And anyway, he never had children. She never had children. And since he has been is he a widower? Since he's been a widower
Widower.
and lost his wife, some of his friends' daughters, who he helped sponsor them immigrate years and years and years ago, and who have been family friends of his for a while, are two of them have been deeply in his life since his wife passed and just loved on him like daughters. And in that culture they call each other auntie and uncle a lot, so they call him uncle. His name's Sham. But so it was really sweet. I got to meet actually one of these gals when I was out there, one of these like daughtery type gals to him. And it's funny to me because Anne Marie has like never, not ever wanted me to consider her an aunt or anything other
That's
than a
your
friend.
friend's name, Anne
Yeah,
Marie?
that's my friend's name, Anne Marie. She's never wanted me to consider her as a friend. But as I'm there, I took a break from cancer world to go out and kind of play nurse to her, which was very refreshing for me, because taking care of one person and like a recovery situation is very different than being a mom and a business owner and a cancer nurse here. It was a very refreshing time. But it was also like, I think it showed Anne Marie how much I am endeared to her. Like, I'll come wipe your butt if you need me to wipe your butt, like a daughter would, right? And I'm not her daughter, and I don't want to be her daughter. But watching Sham realize I was to Anne Marie what these women were to him, just like these younger next generation. I'm going to love you like you need to be loved no matter what life is throwing at you right now. Type of person that would hop on a plane and come take care of you for a week after you have a major surgery. He has been the sweetest to me. He's sending me emails, checking on how my dad's doing. I called Anne-Marie last week to just kind of give her an update. She's really close friends with my family, and he was there. And so I talked to them about this kind of frustrating thing Sophia was helping me through with trying to get my dad tube feeding and getting a lot of resistance. And there's just like things going on. And I called today to kind of give them an update on things. And at the end of the call, I said, and by the way, thank you so much for, just your wisdom last week and talking to me and being firm in some areas. Like you need to advocate more, and being soft in other areas, just being kind to me because I was going through a hard thing. And at the end of the call, he said, Caitlin, I will truly consider you like my daughter, and I will always say the hard things if it will help you, and I will always be tender to you because that's what makes life so beautiful. It was just so sweet to see him like
That is so sweet.
transfer this sweet love that he knows that I have with Anne-Marie, that he's seen me be with her, and now he's like pouring into me. It's just really sweet. He's like, you're like a daughter to me. And I also know that he doesn't just say that lightly, kind of. And
Yeah.
it was just really sweet. I feel like I, through this really hard time in the last handful of months, just like so much has been thrown at us. I've just had such great friendships and love and community around me, even ones that were unexpected like that. It's been a big blessing. So yeah, Sham. Yeah, my little
Yeah, Sham. Yeah,
Pakistani
girl.
papa.
Pakistani papa.
He's so fun.
Well, listeners, we're putting a bow on this episode. I really hope that this helped you. And so if anybody you know is new to cycle tracking, or you think they're going to, want to get pregnant at some point in the near future, kick them this episode. Share it, because we want to really demystify this. And there's a reason we do these episodes for free.
Mm-hmm.
We want everyone to be able to access this. So share it, like it, rate, review, subscribe, do all the things, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Okay, wait, I have one more thing to say. We do them for free, but they cost us money to make, and we want to help so many people. And so we've partnered with 3 different companies that have helped us along in this process. And I know you probably prefer the early days of our episodes in some ways because we didn't have sponsors. But we have 3 incredibly amazing sponsors this season.
Hand-selected, curated sponsors who are in direct alignment with what we're doing here.
And so if you are buying bone broth when you're out and about, look for Fond. You should be investing in prenatals if you're trying to conceive or about to. Head straight over to Fullwell. I can't understate how impressed I am with that product and the way they continue to roll out products and services in that business. And check out my Fertility Cloud. Fertility Cloud is a great place to go start the conversation about what's next if you need a little bit more support, or you want to do some digging and look at labs and talk to a reproductive endocrinologist. And get, that type of expert with eyes on your case without walking into a fertility clinic that's going to try to give you IVF as your first step.
Or wait 6 months before you can even see them. Like oftentimes Fertility Cloud has appointments like next day.
Even sometimes same day. It's incredible.
Yeah, depending on your time zone and where you are.
And
so it's much faster.
Yeah. So okay, so now that I've interrupted our ending, we're really ending. We'll see you next week, and we're so thankful that you come back and listen to us talk over and over and over again. Have a great week.